Thank you for listening to Fate Weaver, written by Elias T. Least. If you enjoy this novel, consider donating $1 through Cash App to $EliasLeast. And now, Fate Weaver. Prologue. Legion's Hope. In the vast expanse of space, a monumental structure emerged from the darkness. A star shell, a remarkable feat of engineering that stood as a testament to the prowess and vision of an ancient, long-forgotten civilization. Several thousand millennia had passed since the colossal sphere was first constructed, and its scale and complexity would still inspire awe in all who beheld it. Encompassing a white dwarf star at its core, the star shell served as a massive energy harvester, capturing the immense power of the white star to fuel the machinery and technology of its ingenious creators. Stretching across the massive structure's surface, over 2 billion interconnected modules formed the star shell's outer layer, each with a surface area larger than the average inhabited planet. As one ventured into the interior of the star shell, they would be greeted by breathtaking landscapes that seemed impossible in the confines of space. Towering mountains, with their snow-capped peaks piercing the artificial sky, stood proudly alongside vast valleys that carved their way through the terrain. Oceans the size of planets stretched out across the horizon, their azure depths teeming with its own unique life. These diverse landscapes housed millions of intelligent civilizations, each with their own distinct cultures, languages, and ways of life. Empires rose and fell, species developed and went extinct, and even the belief in gods were devised and forgotten, all within the confines of this megastructure. The sheer vastness of the star shell's interior allowed these societies to thrive and expand, with most never encountering another due to the seemingly infinite distances that separated them. A complex network of bridges and tunnels interwove between the modules of the star shell, creating a labyrinthine web of transportation that connected these diverse regions. Traversing this maze-like network of a single section would take more than a lifetime, and even the most experienced explorers could find themselves lost in its intricate passages for 1,000 years. The star shell's internal systems allowed for the simulation of natural weather patterns, providing the inhabitants with a living environment that felt authentic and familiar, yet always controlled. A sleek mercury hull of a lone ship soared through the infinite darkness beyond the star shell. It was a striking contrast against the void of space, and it moved with purpose and determination. At the helm of the vessel was a creature that belonged to the powerful collective consciousness that once ruled this very construct and millions of others just like it. Now, it was one of the few remaining members of that once grand civilization. Despite the vast emptiness of space, there was a palpable tension in the air as the creature pushed the ship forward with a sense of urgency. These beings were a race of humanoid insect-like creatures of advanced intelligence, far surpassing anything that humans could comprehend. Each member of their collective consciousness lacked any personal identity such as age and sex, even lacking an individual name. They were each simply designated as Legion. They had built these megastructures as an energy source for their vast empire, tapping into the power of the stars to fuel their insatiable thirst for knowledge and conquest. Legion's instrument panel showed no signs of any objects in this section of space, but their mind was all too aware of the power that had been pursuing them. They knew that their species had designed the ship and the entire megastructure ahead to be undetectable, allowing them to move through space unimpeded. Yet, if anything had followed them into this universe, all would be lost. They were still reeling from the aftermath of a cataclysmic battle that had taken the lives of almost all their brethren. The loss was palpable and raw, like an open wound that refused to heal. Their consciousnesses were extinguished in an instant, like candles being snuffed out by a hurricane. The survivors were left to grapple with the overwhelming sense of emptiness and loss, wondering if they, too, would meet the same fate as their fallen kin. The great battle was a one-sided cataclysmic event, an epic clash between the pinnacle of technological achievement and the raw, unbridled power of an unknown universe. During their reign, the Legion epoch saw their species rise to unparalleled heights of power and influence in the galaxy, surpassing all other civilizations they encountered. Their insatiable desire for expansion and conquest drove them to capture survivors from various planets and lesser societies, imprisoning them within the vast interiors of their star shells. These captives, prisoners of war and remnants of defeated civilizations, were systematically categorized and relocated within the immense sphere, not unlike a meticulously arranged trophy case or perhaps a zoo for the Legion's amusement. Legion had watched in horror as their brethren fell, one by one, unable to withstand the sheer force of their enemy. The consciousnesses of the fallen were extinguished, disappearing into the abyss that was their adversary. With the power of millions of stars like this one at their disposal, they had unlocked the secrets of the universe, discovering the keys to manipulating the very fabric of reality itself. But their arrogance had blinded them to the dangers that lay beyond their realm of understanding. They had no idea of the immense power that was locked away on the other side of that door. They found a power that would render their vast empire as insignificant as a grain of sand. The precise reasons for their captivity remained veiled in the enigmatic haze of legend and myth. Hushed whispers suggested they were pawns to be used in negotiations with other races, while others conjectured that they served as a grandiose display of the Legion's power and dominance. The true rationale for their imprisonment, however, was known only to the Legion themselves, and with the passage of time, even their existence faded into the realm of myth. As the Legion's dominion continued to spread across the vast expanse of space, they relentlessly gathered and transplanted an ever-increasing number of flora and fauna within the confines of the star shell. With millions of other species and ample space to accommodate them, the Legion's conquests remained unabated. The intricate ecosystem that they meticulously engineered evolved and adapted over millions of years, creating a thriving and diverse environment within the colossal structure. Chapter 1. A Son's Duty. Cyrus hailed from the tiniest of villages, nestled in a verdant valley that lay beside a rushing river, its crystalline waters glittering under the sun's warm gaze. This idyllic paradise was overlooked by a titanic mountain, which loomed over the village like a sentinel, its ragged peaks shrouded in mist and cloud. The natural beauty of the land and the warm embrace of the community filled him with a sense of safety and home. The air was scented with the fragrance of wildflowers, the songs of birds, and the rustling of leaves, all of which conspired to create a tranquil haven far from the bustle of civilization. Beneath the veneer of peace and quiet, there lurked a sense of restlessness in Cyrus, a yearning to explore the unknown, and to prove himself to his people as a man worthy of respect and honor. He yearned to take on the challenges of the world beyond, and show his strength and courage. Cyrus had always been a smaller kid, his form slender and slight compared to the burly figures of his peers, but he was determined to make up for his lack of physical presence with a steely resolve, an iron will, and a quick wit. In just a few short weeks, he would attain the status of a man in the eyes of his village, a rite of passage that would signify his ascent to adulthood and the start of his journey towards a brighter future. Refusing to be held back by his perceived limitations, Cyrus constantly pushed himself to be better, stronger, and more capable. Though he was small, his spirit burned with a fierce intensity, and he was eager to prove to all those who doubted him that he was more than capable of standing tall alongside his fellow hunters and warriors. Within the village, even though it is important to be strong, certain traits were valued more than size: kindness, intelligence, and above all, loyalty. He always tried to focus on bettering himself and building his confidence, truly believing that these attributes would get him farther in life than being taller. All of these qualities were a part of his being because of the life that he led in the village. His sense of honor and loyalty was a testament to each of his fellow villagers. Cyrus was dizzy with excitement as the day of his manhood ceremony drew near. He had spent countless hours poring over the stories of his ancestors, tales of valor and bravery that had been passed down from generation to generation. He knew that his time had come, and he was eager to prove himself worthy of the honor and respect that came with being a full-fledged member of his community. As the ceremony approached, He felt a growing sense of anticipation and nervous energy, knowing that his performance would determine the course of his life. The trials that lay ahead may be daunting. Many had failed to rise to the occasion in the past, but Cyrus was undeterred. The village elders were secretive about these rites, so he had no idea what lay ahead for him and his fellows. Despite the lack of knowledge, he had trained tirelessly for months, honing his skills in hunting, tracking, and survival, and had learned to read the signs of the land and the weather. Cyrus was ready for whatever trials lay ahead, and he would set out into the unknown with a sense of adventure and determination. The village was plagued by a persistent rumor of a fierce beast that roamed the mountainside. It seemed like every other week there would be another sighting. The elders called upon the hunters to band together and track down the creature. Normally Cyrus would have been among the men of the village, braving the wilderness on the perilous hunt while gathering food and resources. But fate had conspired against him, and he found himself left behind to tend to his ailing mother. The brave hunters of the village had embarked on a hazardous journey to slay the beast that threatened their way of life. They knew that failure was not an option, for the creature was said to be a great harbinger of doom, a sign that something dark and terrible was brewing in the world beyond. Several people from other villages had even said that their people had gone missing. Armed with weapons forged by their finest blacksmiths, and with a steely resolve born of generations of survival in a harsh and unforgiving land, the hunters set out into the unknown, their hearts heavy with the weight of their duty. Cyrus would love to have went on the hunt and have a chance to prove himself. He would have been an aid to the other hunters that set out to track down the monstrous beast. He knew his duty was to his family and community, so despite his yearning to join the hunt, Cyrus focused on his responsibilities at home and prayed for the safe return of his friends and family. She had fallen ill with a fever that raged like a wildfire, consuming her strength and leaving her delirious with pain. As her only son, Cyrus knew that it was his responsibility to care for her, to keep her safe from harm and to ease her suffering in any way he could. He tended to his mother's needs with love and devotion, bringing her food and medicine while keeping a watchful eye on the village. He spent his days and nights at her bedside, tending to her needs with a tenderness and devotion born of a deep and abiding love. He brewed herbal remedies, bathed her fevered brow with cool water, and held her hand as she cried out in agony. Despite his weariness, he did not complain, for he knew that his mother's life was more important than any rite of passage or honorific title. Cyrus trudged wearily along the dusty path that wound its way down to the river, his burden heavy with the weight of water pots sloshing against his aching muscles. It was a task that was traditionally relegated to the women of the village, but he had taken it upon himself to shoulder the load. The sun beat down upon him with an unrelenting intensity, making him sweat and gasp for breath, but he did not falter. As he walked, his mind wandered to thoughts of the hunters, wondering if they had encountered the creature and, if so, whether they had been successful in their quest. He prayed that they were safe, that they would return soon and bring an end to the threat that loomed over their village. But for now, his focus was on the task at hand, on bringing relief to his mother's parched throat and soothing her fevered body. Chapter 2. The Storm. The eye of God cast its unblinking gaze upon Cyrus as he made his way to the water, his muscles already aching from the arduous task ahead. With grim determination, he lowered the heavy clay pots into the rushing mountain stream, wincing as his fingers grazed against the sharp rocks on the riverbed. The cool water flowed over his hands, bringing a momentary sense of relief before he hefted the pots back up, the weight straining his arms and back. Cyrus knew that the other boys in the village would have jeered and taunted him if they saw him carrying the water pots, mocking him for doing what was traditionally seen as women's work. He paid them no heed, and held his head high. In Cyrus's village, there was a communal approach to child-rearing, where all the women in the village were considered his mother, and all the men were considered his father. While some people had specific partners, sexual activity was open and not limited to a single partner. Cyrus's people also placed little importance on technology. Instead, they valued and prioritized the passing down of practical skills and knowledge from one generation to the next through traditional means. This was another reason why the attitude of a village boy was a direct reflection of the village itself, and why they were taught from birth to respect and be respected. Cyrus couldn't help but wonder what was happening with the hunting party at that moment. He knew that they must be facing untold dangers in the mountain wilderness. As he gazed towards those high ridges, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A dark and ominous storm cloud, roiling and billowing like a living thing, racing towards the village with terrifying speed. It was like nothing he had ever seen before, a mass of blackness that blotted out the sky and sent a shiver down his spine. He knew that it would be upon his people in moments, bringing with it a deluge of rain and wind that would wreak havoc upon the land. The village would be vulnerable, exposed to the fury of the storm, with no shelter or protection to shield them from its wrath. Cyrus knew that he had to act fast, to warn his fellow villagers of the impending danger, and to help them prepare for the onslaught. He set down the water pots and ran towards the village, his heart pounding with fear and adrenaline, his mind racing with plans and strategies to keep his people safe. The storm was coming. As he looked up at the sky, the clouds seemed to be closing in on him like a giant fist, the usual warmth of the eye replaced by an icy chill that made his bones ache. He shivered as the wind picked up, whipping his clothes around his body and threatening to knock him off his feet. He could feel the tension building in the air, a sense of impending doom that made his heart race with fear. With a sudden and deafening roar, the storm hit. Lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the world in brilliant flashes of light. Thunder boomed like the voice of an angry god. The rain came down in sheets, lashing against his skin like 1,000 tiny needles, and the wind howled like a pack of wolves on the hunt. He struggled to stay on his feet, buffeted by the fury of the storm as it raged on around him, a relentless force of nature that seemed determined to destroy everything in its path. Then, without warning, the world exploded around him. A bolt of lightning, fierce and furious, struck the ground directly in front of him with a deafening crash, throwing him off his feet and ringing his ears with a thunderous roar. The heat of the strike was intense, scorching the air and setting his hair on end. He felt his body convulse with the impact, his muscles contorting and spasming in agony. For a moment, he was certain that he was going to die, that the wrath of the heavens had been unleashed upon him. But then, as the ringing in his ears began to subside, he realized that he was still alive, that he had somehow survived the deadly strike. He lay there on the ground, his body racked with pain and his mind in a daze, trying to make sense of what had just happened. He knew that he had been granted a second chance, that he had narrowly escaped the claws of death. Cyrus struggled to his feet, his body shaking and his mind in a daze. His vision was blurry, but as he tried to clear his head, he realized that he was holding something in his hand, something that he had not been holding before. It was a small, glowing blue stone, pulsing with a strange and otherworldly energy. He stared at it in disbelief, his mind racing with questions and wonder. Where had it come from? What did it mean? Why had it chosen him? He felt a surge of curiosity and excitement, tempered by a sense of unease and caution. Had the gods chosen him with that strike? He clutched the stone tightly in his hand, feeling its warmth seeping into his skin, its energy coursing through his veins. Cyrus stared down at the glowing blue stone in his hand, his mind racing with curiosity and wonder. He knew that he had no time to examine it further, that he had to get back to the village and help his people through this storm. The lightning still crackled in the sky, illuminating the world with brief, jagged bursts of light. The wind howled around him, tearing at his clothes and tugging at his hair. The rain was coming down in sheets, drenching him to the bone, making it difficult to see more than a few feet in front of him. He knew that he was in grave danger, that the storm was a formidable foe that would spare no one. But he was not afraid as he ran on towards the village. As he sped his way through the storm, he couldn't help but think of the stone. He had never seen its like, and it must be a sign, a gift from the gods of his people. His heart pounded with a mix of fear and excitement. He vowed to be ready for whatever lay ahead, to face the challenges that awaited him with courage and conviction. For he was Cyrus, son of the village, and he was not afraid to take on the storm. Thank you for listening to Fate Weaver by Elias T. Least. Feel free to subscribe to the channel for exclusive original works from this author. All donations and proceeds from this work go directly to him. Cash App $EliasLeast. Copyright 2023.